They want you to believe that our bill leaves in place bailouts for Wall Street. And if that's true, why are those Wall Street firms taking the Republican side in this bill?
Chris Dodd takes on the Republicans in the Senate, while the White House announces that the president will go later this week to Wall Street. The battle over financial reform is on.
This Wall Street fight is getting personal. Top Line starts right now.
Welcome to ABC News Top Line. I'm Jonathan Carl.
And I'm Teddy Davis.
Each day we bring you the latest on politics. And with that, Teddy, what is your top line?
Crist pulls his TV ads. The Marco Rubio campaign says that Charlie Crist is now off the air in Orlando and Tampa. When asked about this, the Crist campaign is not denying it. This could be an indication that Crist is going to drop out of the Republican primary and possibly run for the Senate as an independent.
Well, there's no question he seems to be dropping out of the race. This is what Republicans in Washington are telling me. But here's the interesting thing, Teddy. Senator Cornyn placed a call on Friday to Charlie Crist to try to talk this over with him. What are your intentions? What are your plans? That phone call has still not been returned. Either of calls from senior staffs at the national senatorial campaign for the Republicans. So they are not talking right now. It sure looks like he's going, if not for an independent run, out of that Republican primary. Next up, Lion's Den. The president is off to Wall Street on Thursday for a big speech on financial regulatory reform. Teddy, this is the beginning of an all-out campaign, the kind of thing we saw later in the game on health care, but now it is starting earlier, and I'll tell you, they feel a lot more comfortable where they are on this than they did on health care.
No, absolutely. Totally emboldened right now by the Goldman Sachs developments, going hard on this thing, Wall Street, and they're going to take it around the country. California dreaming. President Obama is in Los Angeles today raising $3 million for Barbara Boxer and the DNC. Boxer is currently running even with two of her Republican opponents, but both of them, Fiorina and Campbell, have significant baggage.
And Republicans think this is the sleeper race of the cycle. I mean, who would have thought that California could be in play? And who knows, maybe it isn't really. But right now, you do have those California field polls, and Republicans feel that this is one of those sleeper races that if they have a really big year, they could actually pull it off and win in California. When was the last time we saw that happen? A long time. Pete Wilson, we'd have to go back. Next up, getting personal. The president, in his weekly address, said that Mitch McConnell was making deceptive and cynical attacks against his financial reform plan. Deceptive and cynical, getting personal specifically at the majority leader. And it is getting personal because as far as the White House is concerned, they look at Mitch McConnell and they see a guy that simply is not interested in working with them whatsoever, that for whatever rhetoric there may be out there, that there is no way that they can bring him on board.
And they keep going back to these two things, that Wall Street meeting that McConnell had, and secondly, that Luntz memo. They keep going back to that memo by Frank Luntz.
Frank's gotten some play out of that. All right, next up we have our guest, Matt Bennett of Third Way. Matt, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you guys, Third Way, you're in for finding a way to work with Democrats working with Republicans, taking a moderate line. Are you uncomfortable to see on yet another big White House proposal, it seems to be that we are going down the line towards a strictly, at least right now, partisan plan?
Well, of course. I mean, it would be, first of all, it's impossible to do anything down the line partisan now that Republicans have enough votes to stop things in the Senate. But it would be much better for the country, it'd be better for Democrats if these were at least colorably bipartisan bills. So, yeah, I'd like to see some Republicans on board, but it's been very difficult to do that. They've maintained party unity.
But if they really wanted to be bipartisan, what could they be doing right now to change the structure and the substance of the bill in order to bring Republicans along? Aren't they going to be against it no matter what?
Well, that's the really interesting question. Bob Corker has said that he thinks just a couple of tweaks to the bill and he would be satisfied with it. And I think he might be able to bring a couple of the other so-called moderates in the Republican Senate caucus with him. But that's not at all clear. And McConnell has done a tremendously effective job of holding that caucus together in opposition to virtually everything that Democrats and Obama have tried to do. So we don't really know, even if they make these changes, whether they could get any Republicans to join them.
But let's take a step back, though. If you look at where we have been for this entire presidency, the major initiatives of the Obama presidency, stimulus, health care, now financial reform, these have been party line efforts. I mean, there's been virtually no, in the case of healthcare, actually absolutely no Republican support. I mean, can you just blame all that on the Republicans, or has the White House made a miscalculation somewhere here?
I really don't think that the White House has miscalculated. I think, for one thing, some of their efforts, not all of them, but some of their efforts to reach out to Republicans have been genuine, and they have really they preferred strongly to bipartisan bills coming to them, because it's easier on the president when it isn't a party line vote. But the fact is, Republican moderates have kind of gone the way of the buffalo in the United States. There used to be a lot of them, and then the herd thinned, and now there's very few.
Hey, I used to live in South Dakota. We still have a lot out there.
Right.
I mean, to be fair to the buffalo, but
there also might be some Republican moderates out there. But the ones in Congress are pretty hard to find. And even the ones that are genuine moderates, I think Snow and Collins and a few others, genuinely regard themselves fairly as moderates. It's very difficult for them to buck their leader. Anyone who wants to be in a position to take over a committee someday or move into the leadership is very worried about doing that. And so this kind of cracking of the whip at the top of that caucus has made it really hard for anybody to break away in a good faith effort to make common purpose with Democrats. The only person who seems willing to do that is Lindsey Graham.
And I wanted to ask you about climate change for just a moment. When we saw President Obama come out and talk about offshore oil drilling at the beginning of the process, was that the right move, or was he sort of negotiating with himself? Should he have done it as part of a broader package, the full cap and trade package, and not just at the beginning like he did it?
Well, I don't think it was purely a bargaining chip. I think he genuinely believes we need to do more domestic production. And so it was seen through the Washington lens as something that he was doing just to bring on more Republicans to the climate change bill. I don't think that's right. I think it was an effort to reach out for that, but it was other things as well. I think it was a signal to the Middle East. It played a number of roles in the kind of thinking in the White House. But I do think that there is some lingering hope that Graham can bring some of his fellow Republicans along on a climate bill if it's structured properly, but it's going to be very tough.
One thing that seems to be one problem that Democrats are facing right now is simply where we are in terms of trust in government. And I don't know if you've seen this new Pew poll that is out today showing, well, let's look at the numbers. I believe we have, look at this. People always, most of the time, trust government, only 22%, 76% some of the time, or never. That right there, aside from the numbers, what is significant there is that is the lowest number that the Pew poll has come up with in terms of trust with government. They've been doing this poll every year since 93, 94. It was so low that when they went into the field with it at first, they thought they had made a mistake, and they actually went back with two separate waves. How do you push through and get big major public support for initiatives, government initiatives, when you've got an atmosphere like that?
It's a huge problem. Almost 2 years ago, Third Way put out a paper by Elaine Kamarck and Bill Galston, two prominent political scientists. And the title was, "Change You Can Believe In Needs a Government You Can Trust." People, and that paper made the point that trust in government was at a low point then, and it's much lower now. So it's a huge, huge problem for any president that's trying to make change the way Obama is. I think the one explanation is trust in government always goes down with Democratic presidents because Democrats believe in governing. Republicans believe a lot less in governing. So when Republican presidents come into office, Democrats don't have a visceral mistrust of government on the whole, and Republicans do. So when their opponents are in office, they're very mistrustful. That's what you're seeing now. It's what you saw with Bill Clinton in '93.
Speaking of Bill Clinton, I wanted to bring up something that he said on Sunday on This Week. He said that he kind of feels like Teddy Roosevelt to Barack Obama's FDR. Do you think historians might in the future see those two presidencies in that way, or is he off the mark on this one?
No, I think he's absolutely right. In fact, look, our organization is called Third Way, which is a term that was brought into prominence in the United States by Bill Clinton and his philosophy of government, and I think it's one that Obama shares. We believe strongly that, I served in the Clinton administration, but we believe that Clinton kind of forged a direction for Democrats that Obama fits very comfortably in, kind of this center-left, moderate form of governance, which gets him in trouble with folks in his own base sometimes, but is very much consistent with the things that Clinton was trying to do. And but for the economic crisis, if you look at the things on his agenda, they all look pretty familiar to those of us who were around when Clinton was in office.
All right, well, we'll talk more about that later. With that, Matt Bennett, Third Way, thanks a lot for joining us. We'll take a quick break.